Good evening. Tonight is Friday, April the 3rd, 2026, and it is right about 10 p.m. Central Standard Time here in the United States. Tonight's video is going to be sort of a podcast with only one topic, and that topic is really how many conventional weapons does does Iran actually still have at this point? And there's a couple of things we want to take a closer look at. And for one is, I want to go back to the Nazi area time. And here we want to just briefly touch on the way the Nazis reacted to the aerial bombings by the Allies, primarily the United States and Britain, from, say, like 1940, 41 on. In terms of bombing the industrial centers, the industrial manufacturing capabilities, to decimate the supply lines of the Nazis at their war activity, especially in the latter part with the Soviet Union. And as a result out of this, the organization TAT, which was the building arm of the Nazi machine, so to speak, had ASS ranking officer incorporated there. I think it was onward from 1940 on, by the name of Hans Kammler. And Hans Kammler was the mastermind of moving production of sensitive stuff, sensitive parts into caves, into mountains, and connecting them, like with Mauthausen, with concentration camps, where they would have, or prisoners of war camps, where they would be used as forced labor in these operations. And that was mostly, of course, in the mountain regions, wherever they could or utilize mountains. It was in middle Germany, where they were building the jet fighters at the time to whatever extent they could, in the V2 rockets and that sort of stuff was in these areas. And of course, the program with the nuclear bomb the Nazis were pursuing. And of course, today we know that almost every nation on this planet has studied the Nazi machinery, so to speak, this whole setup they had, what worked, what didn't work, why did it work, and all of that stuff. And they all have drawn their own conclusion out of it. And one of the eager students of this were the Ayatollahs, who took over 1979 in Iran, displacing the then ruling Shah of his kingdom, or out of his kingdom, and establishing then their own rogue government, so to speak. Now, the problem with this picture over there is that we had now, sometimes in the late 90s, early 2000s, it became public that Iran was pursuing to purchase or to install the centrifuges to produce heavy water to enrich uranium, which you need to go, or plutonium, to get weapons-grade plutonium in the enrichment process. And that is pretty difficult to do. It takes a lot of resources and expertise, and particular equipment and everything else, everything they didn't have. They had to basically acquire. In this process, then, of course, the United Nations got involved after pressure from Europe and the United States, primarily, and they set up a control commission. I think they called that the Nuclear Atomic Commission for Iran, and these scientists would visit over there in Iran the enrichment facilities, because Iran was stating that this was only done for power production purposes and that sort of stuff, rather than to obtain a nuclear weapon. And it somehow became transparent that in this, that the Iranians did not allow the scientists all the access they needed, and there was always problems with them. And the interesting thing is, I followed that over the years, is the commission never looked at conventional weapons. I don't think, to my knowledge, that anyone else looked at conventional weapons. This could be either the, rockets, ballistic missiles, warheads, cluster ammunition, like what we found out now, or drones. What are the drone capabilities? I don't think that anyone really studied or looked at this to see where are these facilities, where are they located, what mountain ranges did they use, and that sort of stuff. I pointed part of this out in my video last year when the United States took on the with the big bombs. They had these bunker busting bombs, and they went into the mountains to destroy the 4 or 5 sites which were anticipated to house the enrichment program, the nuclear program of Iran, and that was pretty much destroyed. Interestingly enough, the left-wing media, left center, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, those people came out almost immediately and they said, well, this bunker busting bombing thing didn't do much damage to the project. So the question is now, what does the left know, what the rest of us don't know? If it comes to this, what do they really know? I think that the Mossad probably is going to be the one who knows most of it, of what they may have or may not have. But in general, no one has any clue on how many conventional weapons Iran possesses, where they are, and what underground or cave assembly or cave manufacturing sites they actually do have. That we don't know, at least not publicly. I looked at this over the last week and I could not find any information on there. No one, the mainstream media doesn't have any information. No one really knows. Donald Trump came out Wednesday and he said it's going to take another, 30 days or so to get the job finished. Maybe they know and they're not saying this, but in all reality is what we do know is that really no one knows of what they have, because the entire focus everyone had put on or was the nuclear program, and the conventional stuff, no one ever looked at this. So when just recently the Iranians fired missiles over to, I believe, to Israel, it turned out that they have cluster ammunition, which is against the Swiss Geneva Convention. That's an illegal weapon, and because of the damages and everything else they do. So it is quite possible that God knows what else we're going to find over there in Iran of what these people have been building, these Ayatollahs. Also, what they found out is apparently is that they do have ballistic missiles which have a 3,000-mile range or something like this, where you can go to Europe and they could reach Berlin with a conventional warhead or nuclear or ABC, any type ABC type warheads. So there seems to be a big black hole in this entire country. Now, some people have thought about this here in the last week, that some weapons might be coming in now from Russia, from the Russian Federation, because they're getting depleted, and who knows. I personally don't think so, especially ballistic missiles. And the reason why I'm saying is just because the Russian Federation has their hands full with the Ukraine. I do not think that the Russians are far enough in setting up their industrial military complex in the war, type of war equipment or war manufacturing stage, that they could produce enough to support their ongoing cause. And another country now, like Iran, whether you send this in by aircraft or if you're going to send it in by ship, over the Caspian Sea. I guess that's what we're talking about. I seriously doubt it because the logistics of it, and I'm pretty sure that the Americans would have picked up any kind of that type of movement already, with their satellites and their reconnaissance they have over there. And they probably would have simply bombed them, gave them a warning if the Russians were coming in there on Russian boats. You're probably just going to fire one or two shots. And the Russians know that this is not a good direction to go, trying to supply them. But I personally do not believe this at this point. Um, I just think that the Russians are too strained with their own thing right now. The Chinese might be a source of parts or weapons if it turns out that the Iranians would in turn let them pass in the Strait of Hormuz to go through with their Chinese ships, especially with the oil they're getting from them. I mean, that happened. Who knows if there's any dealings behind it? But here again is the stuff would have to come from China into Iran, and at the concentrations we have right now with American military over there, it is highly unlikely that this would get unnoticed into the country. And here again is some warning shots from the Americans towards the Chinese transporting this would probably end that pretty quickly. Well, these are the thoughts. No one knows, and I think until we have a better picture of this, of what really is there, what has been eliminated, when someone says 80%, 80% of what? Because no one knows what was 100%. A million drones? 10 million drones? I don't know. You say 80% of what have they eliminated? We don't have any real numbers in this. 80% of what? That is the question. 60% of what? 70% of what has been destroyed or not destroyed? Since we don't know what we started out with, since apparently no one has any idea of what was there in the first place. So this way, we can't really say when this is going to end because we don't know on how much stuff they had in the first place. With that, have a great evening, and we will be checking in here shortly.